Well, for more on what the French president had to say, let's turn to Michael O'Hanlon from the Brookings Institution, where he's a senior fellow and director of research in foreign policy. So, Michael, what do you think of what Emmanuel Macron had to say, and what do you make of the timing? Why this type of criticism now?
Well, in Macron's partial defense, before I criticize him like everyone else, there are two things perhaps that are valid about where he's coming from. One is, of course, his frustration with an American president Reid, and often so prone, insultable or irresolute about allies. And then secondly, Macron is, I think, correct that Europe would benefit from more autonomous military capability and certainly from more overall capacity. In other words, not depending quite as much on the United States for European security. But he picked a funny way to make these points. For one thing, I don't really believe that it's realistic for Europe to handle all of its security on its own, especially since the European Union now includes the Baltic states, the Nordic states, or most of them. These are faraway places that would be hard for European countries to defend, even if they doubled their military budgets, frankly. And they probably need American help, especially if Russia's threatening. And then secondly, to say that Article 5 is in dubious shape, that sounds like an echo of Donald Trump himself, except maybe even worse. When Trump had doubts about Article 5, he just didn't talk about it. That's, of course, the mutual defense pledge. Macron is saying he's not even sure it's operative. It's not even clear that countries would honor it. And that's, of course, an invitation to aggression or a suggestion that deterrence perhaps is not as robust as it could be. And, that's a little bizarre to say. It sort of may encourage adversaries, and it also ignores all the progress NATO's made in strengthening defensive positions in the Baltic states and Poland the last few years. So I think Macron started with some valid ideas and then just went off in a funny direction.
And how is Russia reading what Macron said, and with Merkel and NATO leaders really pushing back on Macron's comments?
Well, I guess you just quoted a Russian reaction being pretty happy. Of course, Russia could be expected to say something like that. Russia sees NATO as obsolescent and a Cold War artifact that really should be simply disbanded. And at the moment, Russia, of course, is concerned that NATO may someday try to expand not only to the Baltic states, former Soviet republics, but even to Ukraine and Georgia, because since 2008, NATO has had the public commitment to someday bring those countries in. So I think Putin and the Kremlin, they really detest the NATO alliance and wish it would just go away. So they're going to seize any opportunity to amplify internal NATO doubt about its own purpose. But I think that's not really a good reason for NATO to, to somehow accede to those Russian aspirations and desires. I don't want to extend NATO to Ukraine and Georgia myself, but I think that an organization of Western democracies that can operate from Afghanistan to the Balkans to other places is actually beneficial for global security. So I think we should be trying to figure out ways to strengthen it and to make it less threatening to Russia, rather than to somehow, suggest its imminent demise or its obsolescence.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Michael O'Hanlon, thank you.